So let's go back to Zia Yusuf quitting and then unquitting. We need a word for unquitting, don't we? Unbreak my heart. Yusuf resigned as Reform chairman after Sarah Puchin asked Keir Starmer for a nationwide burqa ban. She did it at Prime Minister's Question Time. Yusuf, a practicing Muslim, called it dumb. He then quit, saying he felt exhausted after 11 months without rest and undervalued by colleagues. I feel you there, Zia Yusuf. Also, his sidekick, Nathaniel Freed, is head of their own Doge Reforms Department of Government Efficiency. He also stepped down in protest. 48 hours later, he's back after talks with Farage, saying his resignation was a mistake caused by burnout, and he's now going to oversee policy, media, and fundraising strategy. Right, Raf, what's going on? What happened here? Is it our old pal factionism?
Yeah, I think there is always this problem within any organisation that Nigel Farage sets up that he has. If only everyone would just do exactly what Nigel wants and says, then everything would work fine. But unfortunately, you have to involve lots of other people in the organisation. And in this case, although Yusuf, is ultra loyal to Nigel Farage and won't ever go against him, clearly he is also having to deal with these other people, the more complicated, messy human beings in mulch that have to feed the Farage machine, and one of them is this new MP, Sarah Puchin, and presumably that was just a final straw. It's quite plausible that what he says is true. They just thought, there's too many idiots and incompetents and people who don't want to do it Nigel's way, which is also, by the way, my way. He might be thinking our way, and I can't be bothered anymore. And one imagines, I don't think it's wildly speculating, say that essentially Nigel got on the phone and said, I can't do it without you. And no, we really value you. What do you want? And he thought, actually, there is no other way for me to fulfill, what, as Alison was saying, whatever ambitions he has. He recognises that he's on the fastest ride to wherever he wants to go is still the Nigel train. So he climbed back on board.
Yeah, he's an interesting figure. Grew up in Lanarkshire, Muslim, as I said, formerly quite left-wing, studied international relations. His parents had emigrated to Britain from Sri Lanka. Apparently, he was delighted when Obama won the presidential election. Then he went into Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs and ended up setting up a luxury concierge service called Velocity Black. That's a journey, isn't it? Reform is always a pain to say that it's not racist and it's just concerned about borders and common sense. But Yusuf definitely got a barrage of racist abuse when he took the chairman's job. And obviously the party's obsession with deportation and hammering the Muslim theme does sound pretty racist. I mean, does it, before the podcast, we were saying, is this basically boiling down to this is a party with a racist base trying to not to look that way?
Well, I think so, because, and particularly as this particular issue seems to have come to a head when that Sarah Puchin got up and asked about banning the burqa, which hadn't been part of Reform's policy up until that point, although now appears it is. And also, Zia Yusuf's now come out and said that he too would vote in favour of banning the burqa. So, but there's no doubt that after she said that and he criticised it as being dumb, he then got a huge amount of abuse again. And that must be horrendous because he is putting in all this work. He is trying to create a professional party. And he is, I think, because what he said about the burqa since is that this isn't really a thing that most British people care about, which it isn't. So he's trying to sort of talk about, trying to create some kind of economic policies that might appeal to people. They're trying to sort of, actually become a professional party with a proper ground base that's operating effectively. And then somebody comes out and says something like that. And you must think, God, was it really worth all that effort on my part?
Such a weird thing to say as well, because as you say, not exactly in the air. It's like jumping up and saying, who should win the X Factor? Should it be Gareth Gates? It's in the past.
But then, of course, everyone's now jumped on that, haven't they? Suella Braverman was all over somewhere at the weekend saying, yeah, let's ban the burqa. So that's now back as a thing. So you can see that he probably did just think, what am I doing involving myself in the party? Although, interestingly, he's now been offered this sort of more media role. He's going to be perceived as a sort of a cabinet member in waiting. So I think his ambition is sufficient that he wants to go with it.
Point of order, they're all cabinet members in waiting. I think 5 of them, you see. In fact, he's not even an MP, so he can't. Yeah. Leaving in high dudgeon and then coming back in 2 days later, it does not give the impression of principle, and it does not give the impression of being organised. I was going to ask you, has this damaged Reform? But Reform just seems to be impervious to the kind of things that damage normal parties.
Yeah, you're taking a very old-fashioned approach to life, which is where you have to be consistent and honourable and everybody understands where you stand for. I mean, that doesn't work. You look at, the comebacks, Trump, Farage said he would never come back. He did. So I think they work on the theory that everyone's attention span is now so short they've forgotten about it by the following day, which quite often they have. And also they somehow managed to sort of turn this into its own form of authenticity. And the fact that you can change your mind day by day makes you more authentic.
What can I say? I'm just a capricious, exciting individual. I'm here, I'm there. You never know what you're going to get with me. Make me Prime Minister.
I'm crazy.
Yeah. Matt, I want to just ask you briefly about the relationship between Reform and its nearest ideological cousin, which is MAGA. So they keep pinching things and going, we're going to have Doge in Britain, which makes it makes two kinds of no sense. One, they're trying to introduce it at a local level. It's not the government's efficiency. So somebody was calling it Dolge because it's the Department of Local. And secondly, it's a joke on Dogecoin, which is a cryptocurrency. What Reform voter in a normal town, what normal person even knows what this is? And yet Reform is trying to import all these things from a political movement whose figureheads are absolutely loathed in the UK.
Well, I think they're just obsessed with American stuff, and particularly on social media. That's where the energy is, MAGA and Trump and everything. I mean, it feels almost like slightly like a mirror image of liberals obsessing over like the West Wing a few years ago. It's that sort of everything was always refracted through the idea of what would Bartlett do or something. And I think it feels like they're taking ideas from Trump, from MAGA, from Musk and people because they're well known, because people have heard of them. And they're trying to stay sweet with that crowd because there's a lot of money in there. Yeah. And there's a lot of dark money. There's a lot of, Musk has admitted basically buying American elections, and who's to say that he couldn't do the same here?
Well, the law has something to say about that. He has. There are ways, but technically, he's not legally allowed to.
No,
to
but
buy an
we've
election.
already heard them talking about how Twitter UK is going to start funneling money in and things. And there was all that talk about whether Farage was going to get £1 million from Musk, and none of that necessarily happened. I think the thing is that Trump isn't popular in the UK. If you look at YouGov data, the latest poll I could find from a couple of weeks ago was Trump is currently at 16% liked and 66% disliked, and also at 99% fame. And I would love to be one of the 1% of people who don't know who Trump is.
I reckon it's some kind of elective operation.
Yeah.
I reckon it's like severance. I don't want to know who Donald Trump is. Blast. Fantastic.
But having said that, they've also done polling on Doge, and it's similar numbers, 16% in favour of it, generally 47% not in favour, but 37% of people didn't know what it was. And I suspect that is basically who they're going for. It's the people, as Raf said, a lot of Reform targets are not people who traditionally vote very much, and it's people who they're trying to wind up about a thing that sounds good. I mean, the idea of cutting waste sounds good to everybody.
Yeah, who's going to say, I'm against government efficiency?
Yeah. Also, there is the Farage political business model isn't quite the same as, I need to appeal to voters with ideas and they might come out and support me. It's I have friends, I can cultivate the Telegraph, the Sun, the Mail, the Express, and feeding that through the wider right-wing, now digital ecosystem, shape a zeitgeist and a set of conversations, which then become a conversation on Today, the BBC, and then that cultivates my support in the country. So he's very, very good at capturing, an air war national media narrative, and talking about Musk and Doge achieves that very effectively. But we're talking about it now.
Yeah. Well, you all get sucked into it whether you like it or not. But ultimately, what he's retailing is you couldn't make it up. Look what they've gone and done now, and there doesn't need to be any substance at all behind that, does it?
No, you could famously. I mean, that Musk made up or misconstrued or willfully misrepresented all kinds of things, saying that their billions of federal dollars have been spent on them.
And they've already started doing that. Doge have already started doing that in the UK. Ysef has started quoting things on Twitter saying, "What about this contract in Kent?" And it's when you actually look into it, it's nonsense.
Not another sort. Yeah.